Well, good morning. It's Scott over at Ready Squirrel. I've got a new article up, How Much Food to Stockpile Per Person. I go into detail on calorie count in this, nutritional value of the food, and also shelf life. You can't just go 100% based on shelf life. If you want to have a long-term food storage, you're going to have to get into some items that, instead of hermetically sealed white rice in number 10 cans that will last 30 years, you're going to have to do some stuff that might last 5 years, and then you're going to want to rotate that stock in and out. So I'm not really talking about the kinds of foods so much as I'm talking about how to think about setting up your own food storage. So I started my emergency food storage really not knowing how much to stockpile, to be honest. I bought a bunch of bags of white rice, and I bought a bunch of lentils and a bunch of beans, and that was kind of how I started my emergency food storage, which is not the greatest way to do it. I have 4 people in my family, and if you want to move in a direction where you're going to have a little bit more long-term food storage, like three months to say a year, you're going to want to pay a little more attention to calorie count and kind of how much you're going to need every day. And depending on what your resources are, you may want to shoot for more than what the average daily calorie count is that's suggested by the FDA. So you want to stockpile enough food to provide at least 2,000 calories and 1 gallon of water per day per person for an emergency or natural disaster. The minimum storage requirement for the 72-hour emergency kit, which is suggested by FEMA, is right around 6,000 calories and 3 gallons of water per person. So here I've got the contents. You can jump to whatever section you're interested in. 10 things to consider when you're stockpiling your emergency food. How many people are you feeding? How long is the emergency going to last? Yeah, you're not going to know that definitively, but you can shoot for a specific emergency: power outage, hurricane, tornado, flooding. Kind of think about what the most likely scenario is in your situation, and then you can start your planning based on that. I mean, there's no hard and fast numbers here. None of us have a crystal ball. So don't get hung up on that. Just get started with something. Have at least 72 hours worth of food and water. So again, you can figure that by calories needed per day for each person based on age, sex, and physical activity. And I have the charts down below that shows you the FDA requirements for that. You want your food to be a mix of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. You want to meet those requirements, those daily requirements in your diet. You don't want to, for instance, just to use something as a simple example, you don't want to have a bunch of rice, a bunch of beans, be surviving on that for a year and have no vitamin C. And you can check some of those gaps by having multivitamins and vitamin C in your storage. So you want to store foods that have a long shelf life, or foods with a shorter shelf life that you can rotate into your regular diet, so you always have stock in hand. We eat a lot of rice. We eat a lot of beans. I actually enjoy that. To me, there's like nothing better than stewed beans with a little bit of sausage, white rice, and some Tabasco. I mean, like for me, it's not quite as good as a juicy steak, but it's up there. Again, kind of redundant, but plan for your minimum water requirements, 1 gallon per person per day. That's the FEMA requirement, and that's like hardcore emergency situation. That's for cooking, that's for cleaning. It's not just for hydration, it's also for personal hygiene, and that is not a lot of water. So keep that in mind. I just thought of this, but try going one day and only use 1 gallon of water. Flush the toilet once, and then that's, you've used your daily allowance. Think about how you're going to prepare your food. Again, do you need extra water? And what I mean by that is, let's say that your stores include, rice and beans. Both of those things require water to cook. So that's a water allotment that you're going to need to plan for, in addition to your hydration. You're going to want to think about your cooking methods. How are you going to cook food under different emergency scenarios? The power's out. If to me, one of the hardest scenarios is if you live in an area like I do where you have really bad winters and the power goes out. If you don't have wood stove or something like that in your house, or a way to cook with flame indoors, you're going to have to plan that. And the tough part of that is most of the things that you can cook with inside that are not based on like a wood burning stove or something like that are not are UL rated for indoor use because of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. So you want to consider that. You know, if you live in Florida and it's nice out most of the year, maybe that's not a good example because you don't want to be outside cooking on a propane stove in a hurricane. But for instance, where I live, if it's spring here or summer here, or even if it's fall, I could totally set up a cook kitchen outside and I could cook on a propane stove. So you want to think about that. How are you going to cook the food you have and make sure you have enough water to cook it? And that's, you know, that's going to be especially important when it comes to things like the staple foods. Why stockpile a short-term food supply? A 72-hour to a 3-month supply is short-term for short-term emergencies or life changes. I consider this type of food supply a safety net, not a lifestyle. So don't depend on stores to provide your food during any kind of an emergency. Don't depend on the government to provide your food for an emergency. You know, the one thing that I think about is even if a FEMA has food available, remember, you're going to a camp. You're going to have to go to a FEMA camp to get that. Depending on where you live, that could be a pretty sketchy environment. So it's just a good idea to have your own food supply on hand. Is that too crazy? Is that too end of the worldy for you? Well, you can think of your food supply more in relation to like small time family emergencies like power outages, something to get you through a stopgap like a job loss or small natural disasters. You don't have to have, a year's worth of food storage for the next zombie apocalypse. Though I don't consider it for that. I consider long-term food storage as a great way to save money and a great way to eat well, at least eat healthy. I'm not much on things like fast food, so that works out for me and my family. And my teenagers now are kind of getting on board with eating healthy, so that makes it easier for us. And, if you have a year's worth of food and water stocked and you're rotating it and you're keeping track of, what goes bad first and you're eating that first and you're rotating it into your diet, that's a huge peace of mind for anything that comes down the pike. And I think one of the things that for me is the most concerning is economic things. Like if you do lose your job or if the grocery store logistics get crashed in a without rule of law or shit hit the fan scenario, you've got that food supply and it'll give you one, time to stay where you're at if stuff's going on around you, and two, it gives you some wiggle room to think about what it is you want to do. Like you don't have 1 week's worth of food in your house and then you've got to make a decision. Like you've got to hump out of your current location. Possible scenarios, this is kind of beating the drum. National catastrophes, hurricane, flooding, tornadoes, earthquakes, civil unrest, short-term family emergencies, job loss, illness, family or friends need assistance. This list could be different for everybody and it could be a mile long. Just anything that could go south. And put you in a situation where if you had a bunch of food on hand, it would make your life easier. Why stockpile a long-term food supply? Okay, so we talked about short-term food supply, 72 hours to 3 months. To me, that's more of, short-term emergency, whereas long-term food supply is more of a lifestyle. And you may not be interested in that, but I consider that storing more than 3 months' worth of food. You've invested a lot of your time and resources into a long-term food supply. You've increased your knowledge. You've spent a lot of money. With this type of storage, with anything over 3 months, you've got to start rotating your stock, and you've got to start incorporating the foods that you're stocking into your regular diet. I don't see any other way to do it. Not only are you maintaining a healthy stockpile of food, you're also learning about it, like what works for you, what works for your family, what doesn't, how much water you need, how to cook it in different situations. So possible scenarios for long-term catastrophe. any natural or man-made catastrophe that lasts long-term, civil unrest. Excuse me, family emergencies in the prepper lifestyle. Again, job loss, illness, lifestyle, like self-reliance, a large safety net, and peace of mind. A minimalist lifestyle, maybe you want to work towards cutting down on your bills. Think like Dave Ramsey, financial freedom. Purchasing food in bulk is less expensive. Purchase large quantities of food on sale. Purchase bulk perishable food items and preserve them for long-term storage. Think storing food and prepping is a waste of time. Check out the Ready Squirrel article, 37 Reasons Prepping is Not a Waste of Time. And you can go over to readysquirrel.com and click on that link. I'll have a link down below to these articles. So get started with stockpiling emergency food. Create a 72-hour emergency kit. That's the first step. According to FEMA, being prepared means having a 72-hour supply of non-perishable food, water, and supplies to last you 3 days. That's not a lot, guys, but it's better than nothing. So this is the 72-hour kit. I think is an excellent way to get your feet wet with food storage. More than likely, you already have 72 hours worth of food in the house, but I think just putting this together will get you started. Get your prepper juices flowing. 72-hour kit includes water, minimum 3-day supply of non-perishable food, battery-powered hand crank radio, flashlights and headlamps, a first aid kit, batteries, whistle, dust mask, plastic sheeting and duct tape, moist towelettes, garbage bags, plastic ties. Garbage bags you can do so many things with. They're pretty awesome to have, especially those contractor grade bags. Plastic sheeting. Let's just use an example. Maybe you're out of power. Maybe windows got knocked out in a storm. You'd be able to repair those windows to cut down, keep rain out of the house, keep the wind down. Wrench and pliers to cut off your water supply in case you have a pipe burst. Manual can opener, of course, to open the non-perishables. Have a map of your area, and preferably you have a bug out plan. It's not. I'm trying to think. FEMA doesn't call it a bug out plan, but there's more to the 72-hour kit than just these items. It's also a plan on what you're going to do if something happens. If you're going to walk out, where are you going? If you're going to drive out, where are you going? Does everybody have their own bag with emergency equipment to get in the car? When you get in the car, where are you going to stay? Are you driving out of state, etc.? I'm thinking of a hurricane when I talk about that. So that's what map of your area is. Imagine if you had some kind of a catastrophe, like let's say a hurricane, you might not even recognize things. You might not recognize landmarks because they might be gone. You want to have a cell phone with chargers in your vehicle. PDF, recommended items to store in your 72-hour emergency kit. That's a link over to FEMA if you want to go check it out. It's a little more comprehensive. I kind of felt like I was getting a little off of topic on this, but I didn't want to not put these other things in there, and then people are thinking, oh, all I need is food and water, I'm good to go. Types of non-perishable food to stockpile in a 72-hour food supply. This is just to give you an idea. You could focus on canned meats, canned soups, ramen noodles, power bars, peanut butter, dried fruit, canned juice, food for infants, cheese, oatmeal, hard candy, backpack meals, or freeze-dried meals. Freeze-dried meals, awesome, and super expensive. So that's not an option for everybody. But if you've got the funds, it's worth looking into having at least a little bit of that, and I'm not sure what just happened there. Water is more important than food. Can't stress that enough. You can last 3 weeks without food and 3 days, maybe 4, without drinking water. Okay, daily calorie requirements for males by age and activity level. I'm not going to get too into this, but before you start stockpiling your emergency food, figure out how many calories each person needs daily. Knowing calorie requirements will make it easier to plan for meals for short-term or long-term food storage. In a long-term survival situation, your activity levels will probably be way up, so focus on providing enough calories for an active lifestyle. Chances are you won't be channel surfing on the couch. So this is the chart, and it breaks it down by age, sedentary lifestyle, moderate lifestyle, active lifestyle. So I've got 2,000 calories a day. So that's like not that much, but I kind of had to pick something because I don't know how old the people are in your family. I don't know how many males you have, how many females you have. But let's just say you're 31 to 35 and you're out there cutting firewood for your wood-burning stove. You don't have power. You might be eating 3,000 calories a day. If you're 14 and you're sitting on the couch playing PlayStation, you only need 2,000. And all of these numbers, the calorie requirements are from the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Excuse me. Then I have the daily calorie requirements for females by age and activity level. Kind of the same thing here. Females require a little bit less calories, but not too much less. If it were me, I would just consider everybody male to build in a little bit of safety net for my calorie count. Stockpiling food, you want to balance carbs, protein, and fat. Carbohydrates, according to KaiserPermanente.org, you want 50 to 60% of your daily calorie intake from carbs, 12 to 20% from protein, and 30% of your daily diet from fats. Foods that are high in carbohydrates, just to give you an example: oats, rice, lentils, dried peas, pasta. Foods that are high in protein: powdered eggs, almonds, lentils, oats. Not actually high in protein, but it's one of those foods that kind of gives you a double whammy. You get 32 grams of carbohydrates and 6 grams of protein from a cup of oats. Stockpile foods high in fats: almonds, olive oil, dark chocolate, coconut oil, vegetable oil. Oil, cooking oil has a lot of fat. Doesn't last a long time, but if you're rotating in and out of your food stock, I think it's a pretty good choice for one of your fats. 2 weeks supply of food and water. Once you have your 72-hour kit wired in, I suggest pushing forward, storing at least 2 weeks supply. To meet the 2-week food requirement, one person will need 28,000 calories and a minimum of 14 gallons of water. To survive 2 weeks, a family of 4 needs 112,000 calories and 56 gallons of water. And these are just some examples. Again, I'm not telling you this is what you got to store. I'm just giving you some examples so you can kind of look at calories and get a feel for serving size versus calories. Powdered milk, dried fruit, banana chips, canned meat. Canned meat is it's not my favorite. I gotta admit it, but look at that Spam, 1,044 calories in a can. I mean, that's a lot of calories. Yeah, I personally think it's kind of gross, but if I was hungry, I would eat it. So we've got vegetable soups, meat soups, canned fruit, canned juice, a little bit of sugar here, vitamins, hard candy, trail snacks, power bars, instant ramen noodles. Things like instant ramen are good too because you can add found stuff to them. Like if you've got a small garden or something like that, or if you can forage, you can just mix those veggies right into the soup when you're cooking it. Source of this information is either through the USDA or from the manufacturer. If you're already doing long-term food storage, if you're not just ramping up and this is your first food storage, but you have long-term, you can incorporate some of those staple foods that are in your long-term food storage. Wheat flour, all-purpose, vegetable oil, soybeans, white rice, sugar, pasta, chicken beef or vegetable cubes, rolled oats, dried legumes, potato flakes, dried eggs. Again, the source of this information is coming from the USDA, and you can see serving size versus calories, like what you'd be looking at. 1 month supply of food and water. If you're on your own, you need 60,000 calories and a minimum of 30 gallons of water in an emergency or natural disaster. Excuse me. A family of 4 needs 240,000 calories and 120 gallons of water to survive 30 days. Cool fact, 1 cup of cooked kidney beans contains 225 calories. So if you're on your own, you'd have to eat 267 cups of kidney beans to provide that 60K calories. Of course, that's not a well-rounded diet, but that just gives you an idea of volume. Stockpiling a 3-month supply of food. One person needs 180,000 total calories for a 90-day emergency food supply and at least 90 gallons of water. A family of 4 needs 720,000 calories and 360 gallons of clean water to last 3 months. Interesting fact, a gallon of water weighs 8.34 pounds. So if you were providing 90 days of water for a family of 4, that water would weigh 3,002 pounds, and that is a lot of weight. And that is not something you're going to be lugging around. So you really have to plan for water, like where you're going to put it. Because once you fill one of those 55-gallon drums, you're not moving it. You know, the blue drums. Let me see here. 55 times 8.24 equals... Yeah, so one of those blue drums filled 55 gallons, 453 pounds. So you're not moving it. Foods to stockpile for one person for a year's supply. This is an LDS thing. I'm not personally LDS, but man, they're really good at long-term food storage. And this is not the only way to do it. This again is so that you can look at what it looks like to have a year's supply worth of food. And all of this is a number 10 cans that are hermetically sealed. And I've listed down here the number of cans you need of each item. So this right here is for one person. And it says the type of grains are interchangeable depending on preference. So you could get rice or you could get wheat. You don't have to get, if you want all wheat or all rice, you could do it that way. So you don't have to split it out this way. But this just gives you an idea. So it's 132 pounds of wheat, 65 pounds of white rice, 29 pounds of rolled oats, 21 pounds of pasta, 62 pounds of legumes, that's beans, split peas, and lentils. Milk, non-fat because it's got a longer shelf life, 62 pounds, 70 pounds of sugar, 6 pounds of dried apple slices, 8 pounds of dried carrots, 22 pounds of potato flakes, 2 pounds of dried onions. You need 8 pounds of iodized salt, a pound of baking soda, 4 pounds of baking powder, and then enough 365 vitamin C tablets. This information is compliments of Brigham Young University education. In addition to these long-term food items, these are the items that all of this stuff you would want to rotate into your regular diet, but this is stuff that you kind of have to because the shelf life is so short. Fats and oils, the types are interchangeable based on individual preferences. So I kept it simple here. If you want to, if you like olive oil, then look that up. If you like coconut oil, then look that up and you can see what the calorie count is that. But for the short-term food items, you need a long-term, short-term food items, you need a long-term food supply. So these are items that you definitely would want to rotate. So cooking oil, shortening, butter or margarine, mayonnaise, salad dressings, peanut butter, fruit drink mix, spices, bouillons, condiments. And what this right here is going to do for you is that's going to allow you to kind of shake it up a little bit and kind of treat that psychological aspect of survival. So if you're eating the same diet, months on end, you want to be able to shake it up a little bit by varying the recipes you're using. Dried eggs for baking, yeast for baking, and then other sweeteners: honey, molasses, brown sugar, jams, jellies, and syrups. Again, that information is compliments of BYU. This is the same. I just did the math. So this is the same food stockpile, the number 10 cans that are hermetically sealed for 4 people for 1 year. So wheat, 528 pounds. White rice, 260. Rolled oats, 116. Pasta, 84. Legumes, 248. Non-fat milk, 248. Sugar, 280. Dried apple slices, 24 pounds. Dried carrots, 32 pounds. Potato flakes, 88 pounds. Ooh, typo. Dried onions, 8 pounds. 32 pounds of iodized salt. 4 pounds of baking soda. 16 pounds of baking powder. and 1,460 vitamin C tablets. And the short-term food supply for a family of 4, I did them, just multiplied it out. 8 gallons of cooking or salad oil, 12 cans or 3 pounds of shortening, 24 pounds of butter or margarine, 12 quarts of mayo or salad dressing, 24 pounds of peanut butter or nut butter, 12 number 10 cans of fruit drink mix, 8 number 10 cans of dried eggs for baking, 8 pounds of yeast, and then again your other sweeteners, honey, molasses, brown sugar, jam, jelly, or syrups. Non-food items you need in a long-term food stockpile: hand can opener, grain grinder, grain mill, recipes, and a meal plan. I think this is what gets a lot of people, the meal plan, especially if you didn't grow up in a family that cooks, because you're kind of having to learn the what am I trying to say? You're going to have to kind of learn the cooking from scratch thing, how to bake and stuff like that, in congruence with your food storage, because these staples have to be processed and cooked in recipes. So a simple way to do a meal plan is to create a 2-week meal plan, including every meal, plus snacks and treats, and rotate the same menu over a year, or build it up as you incorporate food supplies into your regular eating habits. So eating this way gets tiresome, but once you get the initial meal plan rolling, you can see how to improve and make it more interesting for what your family's needs are. I've got a conversion chart here for stockpiled foods in number 10 cans. So if you plan on storing bulk food, you need to know how to convert it into measurements for recipes. So, if you pick a bread, let's say you pick a white bread recipe that you want to use, that you like, and it takes 2 cups of flour to make, 2 loaves of bread. Well, in one 5-pound number 10 can, you have 17.7 cups. And you know how many calories is in that? So you can take these measurements to plan how much you actually need and how you're going to use it, depending on your situation. It's another way to look at the calorie count, and it'll give you a better idea of how many ingredients you actually have to cook with. So it goes for dried beans, lima beans, soybeans, split peas. Tells you how much is in each number 10 can. Same for the white sugar, brown sugar, powdered milk, powdered eggs, apple slices, dried potatoes. How do you know if food is good for storage? This is not so much I'm telling you this is good for storage, or that's bad for storage, or don't use this, don't use that. Your ability to have food items in your food storage with a shorter shelf life is dependent really on whether you rotate your food or not. So if you're rotating stuff, it really opens up a lot of other options. This is more a way of thinking about each food you think you might like. So how many calories do lentils and white rice provide? This is how I would look at every food that I considered as a staple in my own food pantry. So white rice, there are 591 calories in a pound of cooked rice. A 50-pound bag of rice provides 29,550 calories. Lentils, 1 pound of boiled lentils provides 516 calories. 50 pounds of cooked lentils have 25,800 calories. So you can see how many calories you're getting out of, or look at and figure out how many calories you're getting out of bulk bags or smaller servings. So what is the shelf life of lentils and white rice? Lentils stored in a plastic grocery store bag, like the ones you get off the shelf, will last a year. And if they're stored in number 10 cans, you get a 10 plus year shelf life. White rice, if you keep it in the store packaging, you're looking at 4 to 5 years. If it's stored in a number 10, hermetically sealed can, you're looking at 30 plus years. You want to think about how you're going to store the food product that's going into your pantry. How are you going to get the longest shelf life out of it? You want it to be hermetically sealed. You want it to be free of moisture. You want it to be in a cool, dark location. This kind of goes up to the 10 points that I made above. What is required for preparing rice and lentils? You want to know you've got enough water. So a cup of rice needs 2 cups of water to prepare. A pound of lentils requires 5 cups of water. And you could probably get by with a little bit less than these amounts, but you'd have to experiment. And both foods require some type of fuel to cook, whether that be electricity, gas, or wood. So you want to in your food pantry planning, you want to know that you have enough fuel to cook whatever you have in your pantry. And you want to know that you have enough water. So you kind of have to prepare it across the board versus just having enough food. So our rice and lentil staple foods. Well, both rice and lentils can be a solid base for any meal. If you haven't eaten lentils, I strongly suggest you try them. I think they're awesome. They're much easier to cook than beans. Also, they're easily incorporated with other foods as they're available to make a well-rounded meal. Foods that you could incorporate with lentils and rice, garden produce, eggs, foraged items, flavorings, nuts, fruits, berries, and meat. It depends on your situation, but from where I'm standing, the way I look at lentils and rice and the way I'm trying to figure out if they're good for my food, long-term food storage, they look like a great addition to a food stockpile. You've got one food that if it's in 15 or number 10 cans, has a 10-year plus shelf life, and one food that has a 30 plus year shelf life. It's comfort food. You get good calories. It's healthy. It's staple. It's a good base for other ingredients that you may have come across or other ingredients that you actually add into your pantry. White rice and lentils, a little bit of Tabasco, a loaf of fresh baked bread from your wheat. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. So you combine a 50-pound bag of white rice and a 50-pound bag of lentils, you get 55,350 cooked food calories. This combination is only 4,650 calories shy of a 1-month supply for one person. So what does that say to me? That says to me, this is a really good base. Like, if I'm just one guy living in an apartment, I'm definitely going to get a 50-pound bag of rice, and I'm going to get a 50-pound bag of lentils, and then I'm going to add something else in there, and I'm going to make sure I have either a propane stove or a wood stove or a hiker's stove with enough gas to cook it, and I'm going to make sure that I have enough water to cook the food. And basically just with one 50-pound bag of white rice and one 50-pound bag of lentils, you have just shy of enough calories for one person for a month. Yeah, it's not perfectly well-rounded. I understand that, but it's a great base because you could easily add on the calories of, onion powder, onions from the garden. You could fry that up, and vegetables or carrots, or you could just cut the carrots up and put them right in the lentils and cook it as a stew. But that gives you a base number that's really easy to work with, and then you just have to come up with the other 4,650 calories for that one person. Fill your food stockpile gaps with supplements. In without rule of law or shit hits a fan situation, you don't know what will be available food-wise. So having vitamin supplements on hand is just a safety net. It fills the gaps of nutrition. So you can easily get enough calories to fill your calorie count, but you may not get the proper nutrition. I'm not a doctor. I can't give you, I can't. Just do a little bit of research on, say, British sailors in the British Empire during the height of the British colonization, and see the kind of diseases that sailors got. Those are the kind of things that you can come across. You don't get enough vitamin C. You can get, I think it's rickets. There's all kinds of different things that you can come up with. So in a 72-hour supply, I don't think it's as big of a deal. It's 3 days. You're not gonna go into some kind of major nutritional deficiency in that amount of time. But if you're surviving 6 months or a year on your food supply, you want to make sure that it's as balanced as you can get it. Gardening to supplement your emergency stockpile. I can't say enough about gardening. If you can't garden, if you don't have a yard, try to do grow lights inside. But if the power's out, that's an issue, right? The one thing that you can always do is you can always sprout seeds. And they don't give a lot of calories, but they're very high in nutrition. And I actually have an article on sprouting. I don't think I linked that. I need to link that. So 12 useful tips for food storage. A lot of this stuff is going to be redundant for you guys. Store food that your family likes to eat. It's good for morale, cuts down on waste. I purchased a 50-pound bag of quinoa and then realized nobody would eat it. Bad move on my part. I should have bought like a pound of it and we should have tried it. Store food you can rotate into your regular diet. If you don't like white rice now, you won't like it when SHTF. Consider an alternative like bulk wheat or dried pasta. Have a good way to cook without electricity. Consider what your most likely emergency situation is. Make sure you have enough of whatever fuel you need on hand. Weather permitting, I like the idea of setting up an outdoor kitchen. It's much easier to cook outside than it is inside. But, you may be in an urban environment or it may be, minus 10 wind chill outside. So, you're going to have a way to cook inside. This is redundant, but make sure you have extra fuel canisters on hand. Do not use any stove or cook method in an enclosed space unless it is rated for indoor use. Every year, a lot of people die in tents by bringing their stoves into their tent in bad weather. Just don't mess with carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Not a good idea. Consider how many calories a food contains. Staple foods tend to be high in calories and easy to prepare. Prepare for long and short-term food storage. Just get started. Start with short-term. See how that goes for you. If it fits your lifestyle, amp it up a little bit. Plan for a blend of calories that include the 3 primary nutrients: carbohydrates, protein, and fats. Store foods that have a longer shelf life. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good thing to do, but I think if you want to have an interesting, usable, long-term food pantry, you need to store some items that have shorter shelf lives and, again, rotate them. Build your long-term food storage around staples. Vary the food you store. Living on just beans and rice will get real old quick. Variety is the spice of life. One of the essential tools when it comes to survival is hope and a positive state of mind. So looking forward to a good meal with food you enjoy as a significant morale booster. Just imagine, you can't stop at the quick shop for a candy bar and 3 months in, you pull out a bag of Jolly Ranchers, or whatever your favorite candy is. Good for morale. Consider sprouting seeds to get nutritional nutrients. I've said this so many times, but I think sprouting seeds is like a secret survival weapon. I'll put a link in here so you can get to the article. Okay, so that is in a nutshell. Pretty good article. I think it's good information, and I think it'll help you get your food stockpile going. Well, I get my dog's barking at me. She wants out. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I appreciate you sitting here and listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Have a great day.